Meanwhile, the president's using D.C. as a testing ground for his new policies to bring down crime. And yesterday, he signed two executive orders. One targets cashless bail, the other desecrating the American flag.
Any street all over the country, cashless bail, we're ending it. But we're starting by ending it in D.C., and that we have the right to do through federalization.
For more details on what this means and how local leaders in the district are pushing back against the president, we are joined once again by Drew Petrimo, the eyes and ears of everything Washington. Morning, Drew.
Morning.
So tell us about this cashless bail thing, what the president wants to do, and does he have the authority to do it?
Well, let's do a little history here first. This dates back to 1992, and it was actually part of an effort to reduce violent crime in D.C. The thinking was that if you set the criteria for who is held in jail between the accusation and trial based on whether or not they're going to be a risk to the community, based on whether or not they're going to show up to trial, instead of whether or not they have money, you could actually improve safety in the district. Studies since then have shown that there is not a correlation between whether or not there is cash bail and whether or not there is an increase in crime in the district. But it's interesting, you heard from Mayor Bowser yesterday. She talked about they made some changes to the bail system in 2023 and in 2024, and she credits that for decreasing crime in the district. So if you reverse engineer that and go back a few years, she's basically saying that there were problems with the bail system in D.C. that allowed certain violent offenders to leave, and that exacerbated crime problems in the district. So there are legitimate criticisms of how bail is implemented in D.C. and across the country, but the correlation between cash bail and crime is just not there.
Let's go and listen to Mayor Bowser yesterday talking about the success of pretrial detention.
Cashless bail is not a new phenomenon in the district. I think it's been in place since the mid-90s. But what does work, and I hope that this is under consideration, is to give judges or require judges to hold certain accused pretrial. And that's why we've seen the reduction in shooting, use of guns in this city precipitously for the last 2 years.
So proponents of cashless bail say, look, the bail system as it had stood was detrimental to folks who would get arrested and then not have the money to get out of jail, and that causes the ripple effect in their lives. They can't go to work, so they lose their jobs. If they have families, that creates some issues there. But at this executive order signing yesterday, the president's staff member really laid out what he is trying to do by signing this executive order. Let's listen to that.
In D.C. in particular, the objective is holding as many criminal defendants in federal custody and subjecting them to federal charges as possible. That means that they'll be held pre-trial in federal jail as opposed to just being cut back out on the streets due to a cashless bail policy.
Okay.
So that really stood out to me. They want to keep as many people as possible in federal custody and charge them federally as much as they can, and they believe this executive order will do just that.
Yeah, that's because if they're in the local courts, then D.C.'s laws when it comes to cashless bail pertain, but if they go up into the federal system, which is usually reserved for more serious crimes, those cashless bail limits don't apply. It's interesting to note, it's not just, a lot of times cashless bail is portrayed as a function of blue states and Democrats, but other red states, Alaska, for instance, has implemented cash bail. I think there is a broad consensus that at least there has been that cashless bail doesn't have this direct correlation to violent crime, but that's not to say it doesn't have its critics, especially there have been cases where cashless bail has been implemented, but they don't have the supervision and the systems in place to monitor people when they're out on release before awaiting trial. So there's been some criticism in that front.
So the other executive order is against desecrating the American flag. Clearly, we all know there was a Supreme Court decision decades and decades ago that said it's an act of free speech. Can you break this down for us, what the president's intending to do?
So the president says that he's going to instruct federal prosecutors to look and see if they can charge, in cases where a flag is burned, if they can charge for environmental violations or other ancillary crimes that have been committed, and not just go after the fact that a flag was burned. This does date back to 1989. There was a Supreme Court decision then that said it's protected free speech to burn a flag. I will note, though, it was a 5-4 decision, so there were 4 Supreme Court justices at the time who said that it should be legal for the government to ban flag burning, and it's probably a more conservative court now. If it was revisited, who knows?
And we saw someone yesterday actually burn a flag outside of the White House. I think we have that we can show.
As a protest to that illegal fascist president that sits in that house. Do this for every single one of you Americans.
Post, this man was not charged with, burning the American flag. He was charged with not the law violating a law against setting fires at federal parks. So that's just sort of an example of how we could see this executive order put into action ultimately. Drew?
Yeah, I mean, that's a relatively, I would imagine, minor infraction, but certainly if you're starting a fire in a public park, that is breaking the law, notwithstanding what you're actually burning.
Exactly. Drew, thank you so much. We're going to
Thank you,
continue the
Drew.
conversation next hour. See you soon.